Day 4. Let's read the prompt. What am I really scared of? So I took a few seconds, so not a few seconds, I took a few minutes to actually think about how I would answer this. Because I didn't really want to repeat what I had already answered in like day 2, what worries me most about the future. So I'm gonna go with something else other than a fear of failure, right? I'm gonna go with, oh geez, come on, loosen up, relax. I'm like so tense right now and unnatural. Alright, so what is my, what does it say, worst fear? What am I really scared of? Okay, what am I really scared of? I'm scared of, I guess I'm scared of, oh boy. Ooh, gonna get vulnerable here. I'm scared of being abandoned. I couldn't think of a, I really could not think of a better way to put it. But if I'm trying to be absolutely honest, getting close to people and then losing those people and not knowing the reason why is something that I'm constantly worried about. And because of that, in my personal relationships, I always get, whether it's friendships or relationships or even with family, I'm always really paranoid about inadvertently, unconsciously doing something or being a certain way that would just drive people away. I don't really know where this comes from. I really don't know where this comes from, but as long as I can remember, I've always had this fear that, this random irrational fear that I'm gonna lose my friends and I'm gonna have no control over it. I just remember, even when I was a kid, I was always trying to tell myself, oh yeah, be careful not to fuck up. Don't act too out of line. Don't act like too much of a certain way, because then people might leave you. And sometimes people would leave and they would drift away for reasons unknown to me even now. Maybe not even because of me. Maybe life just happens and people drift away. But I would always think that I must have done something, or I must have not done enough for people to want to leave. And so now, whenever I meet cool new people, there's always that sense of tension deep inside. Like I'm always a little bit. I'm really chill with them. Like I'm not trying to. It's like on the surface, yeah, that's how I'm gonna say it. On the surface, I'm really chill with them and everything. Like I'm not talking to them an excessive amount. I'm not constantly asking them, "Oh wait, am I being okay with you? Are we alright?" I'm not constantly asking that on the surface, but like deep inside, there's always a bit of me that's like hanging on. Especially when things start going well, I start to really get worried that it's all gonna get fucked up because in my experience, every single positive relationship has ended. I mean, most of them, I'm not going to say every single one of them, but most of the positive relationships that I've had in my life have eventually come to an end. Whether that's just like passively because you lost contact with people because you grew apart, or because or because the both of you just triggered each other way too much and the friendship just died out. Or I got so socially awkward that the other person just became so uncomfortable and they didn't know what to do anymore. And I mean, when you're unnatural, when you're not yourself, you can't really maintain a friendship, right? Because then the other person's gonna feel your energy and they're gonna be made uncomfortable. Oh boy. I don't really like how this is going. I'm just gonna keep running with it. Yeah. Well, the upside of doing these videos is that upside one, it's gonna capture every facet of my personality, no matter how energetic, unenergetic, awkward, whatever. It's gonna capture it all. Oh, I don't. For what? I don't know. Maybe for myself to review in the future. I'm never gonna watch these. I never watch my these kind of videos. I never watched them. They're a little bit too cringy. At least not in the immediate future. Anyways, if I'm gonna watch stuff like this, it's gonna be in the far future, years into the future. Anyways, getting to my abandonment fears. What else can I say about it? I feel like part of this is really a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the more nervous you act around people, the more unnatural and uncomfortable you're gonna make them feel. And the more uncomfortable they feel around you, the more they're actually gonna stay away from you. The more you're actually gonna end up pushing them away. Ironically, because you're so concerned about pushing them away, you end up actually pushing them away. But because then now you're in like a vicious loop. Because you're worried about being worried about pushing them away, now you're like even more paranoid, and it's just meh. Just can't fucking stop the cycle. So yes, I guess that would be something that I'm afraid of. What am I really scared of? Yeah. Well, paradoxically though, I mean, I'm scared of being abandoned, but paradoxically, I'm actually not scared of being alone. Like, if I ever arrived at a place where I had little to no friends, I could totally deal with that. I'm not scared of being alone, and I'm not scared of loneliness. I can, because I have a lot of experience with it. I have a lot of experience with it, and so it doesn't frighten me anymore. Not at all. But what frightens me, what scares me, is that moment when I think I've got a friendship and then there's the potential to lose it. I think that's what scares me. The potential to lose something that I value. That's what gets me really nervous. That's what gets me scared. And that's what causes abandonment fears. Yeah. I don't know, I guess it's kind of similar to people who are afraid of succeeding and they self-sabotage, because the closer they get to actually succeeding, the more nervous they get because they've never really experienced success before. And so they start to freak out because they don't think they can handle it. I think that's basically how I am with close interpersonal relationships. Alright, I need to take a thinking break. Alright, so continuing on this, I thought maybe I should. The downside of not scripting things is that things can potentially come out sounding really stiff. But you know what? Fuck it. Let's go with it. Let's sound stiff. That's fine. I'm going to now explain. No, I can't. Okay. How do I put this? I think part of my fears of losing people, part of it comes from always being sort of an awkward kid who didn't really know how they should behave around others. And part of it came from, maybe came from having to move around a lot as a kid. And always having to switch groups of friends. I mean, I'm not sure how much I want to blame that for my fear, for my issue. Because at the time, it didn't really register to me, you know, like at the time when I was like in 5th grade, 6th grade, and I was moving around, leaving my friends all the time, it never really consciously registered that I was constantly losing people, if that makes sense. Like, I felt sad that I had to say goodbye, but I never really realized that I was stuck in a pattern of saying goodbye. Like, I didn't really realize that until years and years later. So that's why I'm a little bit iffy about trying to give a backstory to this fear by describing my childhood experiences, because I don't know how much of that is just me projecting onto the past versus my childhood experiences actually legitimately affecting my view of friendship now. But I'm gonna go into it anyways, I guess. Why not? Because as a kid, I never really, I've always been a little bit awkward, but at the same time, I was also always able to eventually find at least one person that I could just fully be myself around and that I wouldn't have to worry at all. Like, I would be so close to that person, and we would have such a similar dumb sense of humor that we just have fun together, and I would just forget about all my worries and anxieties. I never worried about being abandoned or losing friends with like that one person at every point in my life when I was a kid. And every place that I moved, I had one friend like this, all the way up until maybe high school. So in elementary school, I had a best friend in Canada, in Vancouver, where I grew up until the fifth grade. And in the fifth grade, sixth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, I went with my mom to Hawaii because she was doing her master's program there and she wanted to take me with her, obviously, right? And so I had to leave my best friend behind and start again in a new school, in a new country. And I did find good friends actually at that time. I jumped into several groups. I made several groups of different friends, and I even found like one person that I was like super, super, super close with. And she's like still one of the, when I think back now to all of the most memorable best friends I've ever had in my life, she's one of them. So when I was in the United States, even though I had just left my friends and I just moved, I was still okay. Like I was still able to make really close friendships at that time. And then we left Hawaii right when I finished middle school and went back to China because my mom had finished her master's degree and everything. And so she wanted to return to China, and so I went back to China with her. So I moved again, and this time was like late middle school, early high school-ish. And though, so now that was another new environment, trying to make friends all over again. And I think the thing about moving constantly is that you never really get to establish a sense of comfort, a sense of I belong here because I know people here. I have friends here, right? Every time you move to a new place, you're starting over from scratch. You're an alien. You're literally by yourself because you don't know anyone else. You're starting over from scratch. And so as a kid, that for me, if it affected my confidence, I feel like if I had grew up, I mean, I don't know for sure because history didn't play out that way, but I'm kind of guessing if I had grown up in the same place, in the same city, in the same town all my life, with the same core group of people, because I had already started out being so comfortable with them, it never really would have crossed my mind to become uncomfortable or awkward with them, if that makes any sense. And I think having a core group of people, starting from when you're young, that you're just comfortable with and not awkward with, and having them walk with you through adolescence as you build these new connections, it probably helps you to feel a little bit rooted and to feel less fearful because you always at least have that, at least one stable person that you can go back to. I'm kind of curious what other kids who have moved around feel. I know not all of them have the same issues I do. A lot of them moved around way more than I have, and they're like super outgoing, super bombastic, and they're just doing totally fine, super popular and everything. So maybe it's a combination of a really sensitive personality combined with a constantly changing environment that I was not, I don't want to say not well equipped. What's a better word for this? I think it's probably the combination of a sensitive personality that craves stability being forced to constantly evolve in an unstable environment. Maybe that's it. I don't know. My lips feel dry. I want to get some lip Oh, chapstick. I get some chapstick. Okay, here we go. Oh, it smells so good. Yes. Yes. Alright, this is going 7 minutes. Okay, a few more minutes. Honestly though, if I can't talk that much, maybe I should just cut some of these videos short. But this is actually kind of interesting. Talking about how childhood influences your relationships growing up, or your worldview growing up. I could just be completely pulling shit out of my ass right now. I don't know. But I do think that for some people, ooh, okay, don't bang on the table. I do think that for some people, our early experiences of friendship greatly color the way we form friendships in our teenage and adult years. So I've kind of learned through the constant moving that friends aren't necessarily going to be a constant presence in your life, and that you're just gonna have to get used to, how do I say, that people aren't going to be a constant presence in your life, whether that's family or friends. Because while I was in Canada and America with my mom, it was just us. Like, we weren't with the rest of the family. We saw them like once a year during summer vacation, and that was it. And that was basically my life from grade 1 all the way to grade 7, I think. 7, yeah, grade 7. So I think maybe through that, I've kind of learned, the lesson I took away as a kid might have been that the people you get close to aren't necessarily always going to be there, and that eventually you're going to have to say goodbye. And maybe as a result of that, I've kind of internalized this fear of getting close to people. But I don't really think it's exactly like that. I don't think it's like because I was forced to separate from people, now I'm afraid of getting close to people because I think I'm going to be forced to say goodbye to them. Because as an adult, that's not really my reality. Because I can choose to not say goodbye. I can choose to not say goodbye to people anymore. So the fear of having to say goodbye isn't really my core fear. My core fear is still that there's something about my personality that's just unnatural. That's just unnatural and not conducive to bonding with people. And I think maybe this unnaturalness could have stemmed from not having grown up with a stable core of peers or friends or community that gave me a sense of security. And because I never really had this sense of security, and I always had to start over from scratch, I always had to start from a place of not knowing how to begin to connect with people, you know? Because if you're just thrown out in the middle of nowhere, just by yourself in a sea of strangers, you don't really know where to start. And so that might contribute to a little bit of a awkwardness and a little bit of a lack of self-esteem, because you don't know where to start. You're just like by yourself. It's like, oh, okay, what do I do? What's okay with this group of people? What's not okay? And I don't know anyone here. I don't know if there's any already existing groups. I don't want to break them up. I don't want to be intruding on them. Like stupid stuff like that. Whereas if you grew up in that community with the same people, you wouldn't doubt or have to question any of those things. You'd know because you grew up around those people. You know, this group is like that group is like that. This is how I interact with them because this is how I've always interacted with them. So there's almost kind of natural sense of confidence in interacting with your social environment because you grew up there and you know it well. Whereas if you've never really grown up in a single place and you've only ever experienced being the odd one out in a sea of people that you've otherwise never interacted with, it gets a little bit unnerving, and you don't calibrate, well, you learn to calibrate yourself because you've had to do it time and time again, but the way that you calibrate is not really, it's not native. Your way of calibration is not a native way of doing it. It's a foreigner's way of doing it. Like you're a perpetual expat, basically. You're a perpetual expat in the social landscape. I think that sums it up. Yeah, I think that sums it up, basically. So yeah. Stares into the camera for like a minute while thinking of an appropriate outro. Maybe I don't even need an outro. Who cares? Oh, just because everyone else has an outro doesn't mean I have to have one. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna keep trying to do these. Even if I skip days in between. Because just because you fall off the wagon doesn't mean you can't get back up again. And that's what I'm gonna try to do. So, this has been day 4. Peace out. Enunciation practice 1, 2, 3. I seriously need to learn to speak slower. Fucking slurring my words all over the place. I hate it. But so hard to talk slow when you've got all these thoughts that you want to just bring out into the reality. I need to like consciously remind myself to speak slower so that I can form the words properly with my mouth like this. Okay, yeah, for real. Good night.